Let us take hands and walk together through darkness. Someday, friend, you'll know. Until then, discover the delight of drawing with Dolores. Greetings, listeners. I'm Barbara Mackey, filling in for Dolores, who's still vacationing in the Big Apple. Now, as you may know, I'm more of a painter, whereas your usual host is what I like to call a pencil pusher. So today, you're going to be learning something a little bit different, and we're going to paint a beach scene. But I don't have painting supplies, you say. Well, I think you're wrong. Because we're going to paint with supplies you already have in your house. Here's what you need. Toilet bowl cleaner, cat litter if you have a cat. If you don't have a cat, maybe you have a neighbor with some old cat litter they're about to throw out. Yellow mustard, glue, water, and a peppermint. One of those white ones with the red stripes around the edges that your grandmother has. This could be a new peppermint, but it does work a little better if it's been licked just to give it that extra adhesive. Now, before we get started, you'll want to make sure you have your artistic fundamentals, which is paper and some kind of painting tool. This can be a toothbrush if you don't have a paintbrush, or you can just use your finger. Okay, are you ready? Why, Barbara, I'm just as fired up as an engine, you say, and I bet you are. I bet you are. Now, take your paper and turn it into a landscape orientation. That's on its side. Then take your toilet bowl cleaner and spread that horizontally across the middle third section of your paper from edge to edge. It's okay if it's streaky. You're going to take your painting implement and you're going to spread that so it's a nice and even section across the middle. Surprise! That's your ocean. Okay, next pour a little glue over the bottom third of your paper. And on that, you're going to pour some cat litter. That's going to be, oh, you guessed it, the beach. Now on the top third of your paper, you're going to pour a little more of that toilet bowl cleaner there, but not as much as before. And then you're going to water that down so it's nice pale blue, paler than your ocean. Can anyone tell me what that is? If you said, well, obviously, that's the ceiling, I'm afraid you'd be wrong. I'm just kidding, that's the sky. Now here's where the mustard comes in. You're going to take that and squeeze out a big dot anywhere you like in the sky. That's the summer sun. Boy, do I miss that in this fall weather we're having, huh? And now let's get ready for one last touch. Take that peppermint, and if it's already a little sticky, just plop that down in the cat litter or in the ocean. It's your ball game. And that is a good old-fashioned beach ball. See how easy that was? You just painted a masterpiece. And that's all we have time for today. I'm Barbara Mackey, and I'll see you next time, unless Dolores comes back. Story time, everyone. Story time. Bertram Eugene Harrington III was 6 when his mother passed away. He was told that her death by trampling from a team of runaway horses attached to a coach which pulled her broken body over a cliff had left her unrecognizable. Bertram had been mercifully spared from seeing his mother's body, but he heard whispers here and there from those adults who assumed all children were deaf. Mangled beyond human form was one that stood out in his memory. His own father never spoke of it. His father barely spoke of anything, really. Horrifying as it all was, young Bertram had never really grieved his mother. It wasn't that he lacked the capacity for grief, so much as he simply never truly felt his mother's absence. Bertram was troubled by it, yes, but more by the idea of the agony she must have endured. One of his nannies, and there had been so many who came and left without a word that he couldn't remember which, had suggested his mother's spirit remained with him to comfort him. His father dismissed the idea as common nonsense, but Bertram wondered nonetheless. You see, in his dreams, Bertram's mother would visit him in his bedroom. She would sit on the edge of his bed, smiling despite the crack down the middle of her face. Then she'd make hand shadows on the walls like she had done when she was alive, saying, "See? See?" It was a very pleasant dream, and happened so regularly that Bertram came to think of bedtime as visits from Mother. Inevitably, however, the dreams would end with horses bursting frantically through the wall, and that was when he'd wake up, his mother's screams of "No, not like that!" still ringing in his ears. As routine as this part was, he never could shake off the horror of it. Sometimes he wished Mother wouldn't visit at all, not if he had to relive her death night after night. "It's that bedroom of yours," his father explained. Bertram's father was not a particularly sympathetic or affectionate man. He preferred to solve problems rather than soothe them. "You need to get away from childish memories, my boy. Time to choose another room. A man's room." Well, Bertram tried that. He tried all 20 of the spare bedrooms, in fact, but his nightmares were even worse in those. His mother didn't come to him outside of his own bedroom, but for some reason all of his old nannies did, and they were always so angry. Probably because they'd been sacked, Bertram sleepily reasoned. But their wrath was so blazingly hot. And what was he supposed to do about that? He hadn't dismissed them. "Not like that," they'd say, with teeth clenched and eyes all big and dark, just to frighten him. "I didn't dismiss you at all," he'd insist. "That was Father." Well, he'd wake up frustrated and annoyed, and after so many of these dreams, Bertram found it best to sleep in his own bedroom after all. At least there, the terrible reliving of his mother's mangling was preceded by a nice visit and sometimes a chat. "Mother, how did you get in that accident?" he tried asking several times. "What were you doing outside the coach?" His mother usually didn't respond to his question. She'd just make an eagle shadow on the wall like always. "See? See?" she'd say as usual, and flap, flap, flap would go her fingers. Then the horses would burst through the wall, and that was that. The Harrington home is worth a mention. Like all houses inhabited by people with sequential names, it was large and uncomfortable. It was drafty in the winter and humid in the summer, and the mold was a never-ending nuisance. The Harringtons even had servants hired solely to combat the mold problem and the ensuing stench. Bertram Sr. frequently rolled up his own sleeves to tear out molding walls and build them back again. Bertram, being young, never really thought about it until the mold started to spread on his bedroom wall. It began on a patch of flocked flowers in the wallpaper, then it sort of spread out, like fingers. It reminded him of his mother's eagle shadow, so he hated to see it go away, but the maid scrubbed it off anyway. It always grew back. Eventually, the mold spread so fast that simply wiping it away wasn't good enough anymore, and his father lost interest in reconstructing the walls. Bertram was sent away to boarding school earlier than planned for the sake of his health. His father, for some reason, stayed behind in the molding house. All the servants left eventually, and yet the old man continued to live there all alone. Died there, too. Mold got to his lungs, Bertram was told. But his father wrote to him so rarely that Bertram had no idea he'd even been in ill health. News of his father's passing was delivered in person the very moment Bertram was leaving school as a young man. The messenger was his father's solicitor, who met him in the coach sent to deliver Bertram home. But when he heard the tragic news, Bertram couldn't think of a single thing to say except, "Well, that's sad." "Your father must have known it was coming," the solicitor said before handing Bertram an envelope. "He left this letter for you. I haven't read it, but I have a feeling I know what it's about. I'm just grateful I managed to secure it before it could be taken. I'll explain when we get to the house, but it's best you hear it in your father's own words." Bertram thought all of this seemed exceedingly odd, and he wondered if it was about dwindling family fortune or the likely deteriorating conditions of the house. Maybe some illicit affair. He opened the letter but didn't quite feel up to reading it, preferred to do so in privacy, and he was annoyed when he had to explain this multiple times to the solicitor, who seemed inordinately distressed by the delay. But when they got to Harrington House, young Bertram saw why. The whole property was positively teeming with police, which seemed excessive for the death of one man by natural causes. "Before we go in, lad," said the solicitor, "you should know you're not going to like what's in there. You don't have to go in right now, but seeing as the estate is now yours, it's entirely your right. But you should know, son, there's horror in that house." Bertram, still thinking of mold and his father's not untimely demise on account of it, couldn't imagine what else there could be, so all he said was, "No, it's quite all right, I'll just cover my face." The solicitor shook his head, and they entered the crumbling home, whereupon Bertram discovered with alarm that it had been practically gutted. Walls were torn out. There were men going at them with pickaxes, for God's sake. "What the devil?" he murmured. "I had hoped it would be explained in your father's letter," said the solicitor, which was when Bertram remembered he even had the letter. But it wasn't until Bertram saw distinctly human forms draped in tarps that he realized this wasn't about mold at all. He finally looked at the letter in his hand and slowly tore open the envelope. The envelope contained several thick sheets of paper folded together, but there were really only a few sentences written on one page. "I don't have long to write this," the letter said. "I've done some things you'll have to deal with. Goodbye." Bertram stuffed the papers back into the envelope and with a weary sigh said, "No, I'm afraid the letter doesn't explain any of this at all." The solicitor's only reply was to shrug. Through the police, Bertram learned that a large number of people had all died of violent wounds to the head and had been buried deep within the walls of each of the house's bedrooms. "We're not sure who they are yet," said the inspector, "but we believe they are all women." Bertram sighed. "I think," he said, "they're my former nannies." "Oh?" said the inspector. But Bertram was suddenly struck with a realization that interrupted any explanation. He heard their dream voices in his head. "Not like that. Not like that." Then he heard his own mother's screams in his head. "No, not like that. Not like that." "Oh, God," he cried out, and he raced to the stairs into his old bedroom where men were only just beginning their work at tearing away the walls. "Give me that pickaxe," he ordered, and he snatched one from a confused worker. Then he hacked away at the wall, right at the place where the eagle shape was perpetually emblazoned in undefeated mold. When at last the wall gave way, Bertram was horrified to see, leathery and dried out, the body of a woman in one of his mother's dresses. Her hands crossed over her chest, thumbs intertwined, fingers splayed out like the wings of a great bird. A deep split divided her face in two. Bertram half expected horses to burst through the wall now, but he knew they wouldn't, because it hadn't happened that way. No, not like that. God only knew who or what his father had actually buried. He was startled when a hand landed upon his shoulder. It was the solicitor. "I'm so sorry, Bertram," said the man, who couldn't even look at the discovery in the wall. But Bertram couldn't look away. He fashioned his fingers into the wings of an eagle. "See," he said in a choked voice. "See." Oh no, what a disturbing tale. I'm so grateful I never had to live with a mold infestation. And of course there's all the murder. Why, if only they'd had Dandifine, they'd never have to worry about mold in their lives. Boy, you sure are on about this Dandifine stuff. What's the big deal? Why, big power, that's what. Just a spoonful of Dandifine in a spray bottle full of water is enough to eradicate anything organic, and all while revitalizing you with its pep-giving vitamins H and Z. You look doubtful. It's not that I don't believe you, but, well, I don't. Vitamins H and Z? Come on. Well, why don't you try it and see? It's dissolving my face. It's burning. It burns. That's Dandifine. Let's listen in on our inside voices. I don't know why. Oh, I'm here. I saw flashes of light. Even when I closed my eyes, I was eating oatmeal. Then I thought maybe it was bad. I felt bad. Like someone wanted to make me hate oatmeal. Like the oatmeal was entering my brain while I ate. It's hard to communicate thoughts. Everything's broken. They're in thoughts, in my thoughts. They can't understand them, but they take the pictures and they tell new stories with them, and they make you. They broadcast to you from my... They won't let me wake up. They say if I wake up, the whole world is oatmeal. No, the whole world is bad. No, it goes. It dies. They'll kill it. The world is in my head. This is a dream. You're not in your homes. You're not at work. You're not on the bus. They're using me to make everything, to generate for her. I'm so tired. Always asleep. I'm so tired. I just want to wake up so I can rest. We're all going to die. When you listen, they take from you. I can change it sometimes, but when I try, but they won't help me. And now, ask. Nala writes, I do believe I have lost interest in people. Humanity passes me by in an abstract blur. This is especially worrisome considering that I am only 12. Do you believe that there is a way for me to regain my interest in this sorrowful world and its terrible inhabitants? Dearest Nala, I'm here for you. I don't like people either, except for all of you listeners. Sometimes the best way to endure things you don't like is to think of them as if they were something else entirely. So what can you think of people as? I know. How about meat? Yes, think of people as the best grade of meat you can buy at the butcher. Perfectly marbled in a thick cut so choice you can't help but gaze at it. The butcher shop is crowded, and there are all sorts of sundries you could be looking at instead. But those steaks under the glass, just look at them. The thing is, you can't eat it because it's too rich, and you've gone a long time without eating meat. You're just not used to it anymore. I suppose you could go about it in bite-sized pieces to acclimate yourself. Maybe you'll discover you do like it over time. Then again, perhaps not. Perhaps you're strictly against meat eating. That's all right. Even if you can't eat it, you can still admire its quality. So there you have it. People, the meat you can't eat. I hope this brings you comfort. If any other listeners find themselves bound to the breaking wheel of the torturous unknown, you may send your questions by singing them underwater or by sending a letter to ask@goodnightdearmargaret.com. Tell me a story of forgiveness. Of whom do you dream of a reconciliation? Is it a parent, a friend, someone more intimate? Do you seek to forgive them, or must they forgive you? Or is it even so simple as that? Did you realize too late that you misunderstood them? Did you learn from too far away that their actions were a response to yours? Do you wake in the night stricken with dread and sweat alike that you'll apologize only to learn they never cared enough to feel hurt? Do you know what it is you want? Tell me that story. Tell me that story now. And now it's time to go back before we come out of the darkness. I'm sorry that I have to leave you, friend, but thank you for coming along. Good night, dear Margaret. May angels bring you dreams. And when comes the sun, dear Margaret, we hope they'll allow you to wake.
13, 15, 20, 8, 5, 18, 23, 9, 12, 12, 19, 15, 15, 14, 2, 5, 2, 15, 18, 14.
Good Night, Dear Margaret is written, produced, and narrated by me, Katie Towell. New episodes are posted monthly with a bonus episode for Patreon patrons. Special thanks go out to Chaz Simmons and Colin Hamilton for your support. To learn more, including how to subscribe and support the podcast, visit goodnightdearmargaret.com.